beliau merupakan wanita yang digelar sebagai Woman of Many Firsts. Selain daripada menjadi Naib Chancellor wanita yang pertama di Universiti Sains Islam Malaysia dan Universiti Sains Malaysia, USIM dan USM, beliau juga merupakan Ketua Pengarah Wanita yang pertama di bawah Kementerian Pendidikan Tinggi, Presiden wanita yang pertama untuk Akademi Sains Malaysia, dan beliau juga merupakan Ketua Pengurusi Wanita yang pertama bagi Agensi Kelayakan Malaysia MQA. Jawatan terkini beliau merupakan Ibnu Sina C untuk bidang perubatan di Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia. Antara pencapaian dan impak hasil daripada kajian yang dibuat oleh beliau adalah termasuk mencapai 16 paten dan dikomersialkan di seluruh dunia, iaitu the Rapid Diagnostic Test untuk typhoid yang dinamakan sebagai typhoid. Maafkan saya. So, typhoid juga mendapat perhatian dan disarankan oleh WHO. Pencapaian beliau telah memenangi banyak anugerah dan pengiktirafan di peringkat nasional dan juga antarabangsa. Sehingga kini beliau tidak pernah berhenti berkongsi ilmu dan telah menghadirkan diri dengan sebagai speaker lebih daripada 400 ceramah jemputan dan lebih daripada 50 ucap tama di peringkat nasional maupun antarabangsa. Beliau tidak lain dan tidak bukan adalah Yang Berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail. Untuk itu, majlis dengan penuh takzimnya mempersilakan beliau untuk sesi perkongsian.
Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Selamat pagi saya ucapkan pada Profesor Datuk Nasruddin, Pengarah AKAP, Profesor Emeritus Tan Sri Zul for the excellent talk yang sekarang menjadi Naib Chancellor saya di IUM, dan juga kepada Tuan Syed dan semua Tuan Syed yang menjadi coordinator for laser dan semua participants dalam laser. Thank you so much for joining this particular webinar, because that means that in your heart of hearts you really want to make a difference. So and I have to say thank you to Tan Sri Zul for explaining the concept of leadership in community engagement. And as we listen to Tan Sri Zul, I'm sure it's all insightful, and I'm sure that you are all, inspired and all that. And then you sit back and you say, OMG, how am I going to do this tomorrow as a lecturer in my university? Because my university is clouded with a lot of governance, a lot of policies, a lot of the things that Tan Sri Zul is talking about as the factory. And you want to make a difference, but essentially you are just a small part or a small cog in the wheel. So how are you going to make that difference, and how within the context of you yourself, right, as a lecturer, as an academic, how you can now make a difference. So I hope, I'm a practical person. I listen to a lot of views and a lot of vision, but I'm the kind who take that vision and how now do you put it into implementation mode, because I think that's very important to now share of how to make that difference. Okay, let me share my slides and see whether this is working. So my topic is backed into research, translational research, the strategic thrust of community engagement. So let's see how much we can learn from here. And sorry. Okay. Basically, this is what I'll be covering today, the history of university, some of the lessons learned from COVID, and what is community engagement and why do we need to do this, and where is higher education going in the future, and why community engagement is now very much relevant in higher education, especially in meeting the 21st century challenges. And then I'm going to talk about translational research and how that's going to impact the community. Okay. Let me talk about the history of the university. All right, universities, I think, have a long time been expected to do a lot of teaching, research, and service to the community. This is way back when, right? And we have Taxila, the oldest university in Pakistan, that has the motto service to humanity, and this basically is adopted as part of the university community engagement since the 7th century. As Tan Sri Zul was saying, there's a lot of things that we think is new, actually is not new at all. It's been there, and that's why sometimes he used the word renewed norms, right? Rather than we just calling the new norms, right? So throughout history, university community relationship is in place due to religious missions, but later in the 17th century, it shifted focus to community and nation building. And but that was the 17th century. But by the 20th century, the idea gave way to being private sector led. And the survival of universities now require the adoption of profit-oriented business model, which emphasizes on efficiency, on innovation, and on quality. And then this is the thing that we are now faced with, right? And when that happens, the university begin to downplay their role as catalysts for social reformation or community transformation. By the 21st century, change is inevitable, and now we have the disruptive technologies, we have climate change, we have economic crisis, we have globalization, we have pandemics, and all these other challenges of the 21st century, all hitting us at one time. And we now have, of course, with digitalization, the emergence of knowledge-based society, the roles of universities now as a driver of economic and social development has resurfaced. So this is why, ladies and gentlemen, now that we faced with COVID and we say, how are we going to go about post-COVID? How are we going to be resilient? How are we going to make sure that all these challenges that we're going to face is not going to go away? They're going to be here for as long as human beings continue to be the cause of all this Anthropocene, as was being mentioned. So we now say that the roles of the university as the driver for economic and social development now need to resurface. So universities are now seen as key players in social development and transformation to ensure resilience when we are going to be facing with future pandemics or other future disruptions post-COVID-19. And research showing impact. So before, you were doing a lot of academic impact, where the research, because of this ranking game that we are into, we want to be, our KPI is always to publish in Q1, Q2 with impact factor, etc. That is what we've been aiming for. But right now, research in the landscape of research, RDCIE, as we now link with the national STI policy of the country, now that we link all research now to economic development, maknanya we have now to be able to create impact, no longer about just output, but now we have to create impact. That means we have to go beyond academia. So this is now showing why research trend is all about, and therefore research need to go now and not stop only at fundamental. It has to now to go and move the value chain to now translational in order to benefit the industry and also society, right? And basically, the lessons learned from COVID-19 boldly states that science and technology alone will not be enough to solve global health problem. And that's why Tan Sri was using the word STEAM or stream or whatever. There are new words that now comes in, right? So, but basically it's understood. The thing is, it is understood now that science and technology alone is not enough to solve the global problem. We now need to come to an era of convergence of knowledge. That means now multidisciplinary and the melting of discipline, which we call transdisciplinary. So we need now a strategic and systematic integration of the science, technology, arts, and humanities, along with innovation, along with entrepreneurial and global mindset, to adequately meet the challenges of the 21st century. So this now, there's a change with COVID. Some of the things that COVID has taught us is that this is now the era of collaboration and the era of sharing of information, and the data that we obtain from research should now be made available to all via open access. So now we are talking about sharing of information. That is now the aim, no longer about keeping it in your pocket as your trump card. So the sharing of information include our research work not only needs to be published in peer-reviewed journals. This is our KPI, but now with social transformation, there is a requirement for our academics also to now write about what is technical, but make it simpler so that it is now understood by the public, so that become now engaged. So we want to now create public awareness about some of the things that we are doing. When the public begin to understand some of the scientific things that we are doing or the research that we are doing, only then can we elicit whole societal approach in providing and implementing the solution. So right now we are talking about not only whole government approach, we can no longer afford to work in silo, we also need to have a whole societal approach, because as you know, the solution for COVID has to be whole government and whole societal approach. It cannot be just by the scientists or you know, you say vaccine is enough. No, you have to make people understand why there is a need for this vaccine. So this also includes, therefore, the translation of our published works into various languages to ensure inclusivity of the knowledge generator. And this is something we have forgotten, because we think that everything we do, we need to publish in English. Because that's how we get into Q1, Q2. And when our mind is now honed into that, this is where we sometimes forget that we have other responsibilities, other amanah, as we say, to our academics. We have the responsibility of course, to the society as well. And this is what we mean, that if we now think about the SDG, we think about inclusivity, then inclusivity also include publication of our works in other language, because not everybody understand English, right? So we need to also now publish our works in various languages to ensure inclusivity of the knowledge generated. So this is why I would like to encourage Tuan Syed and the BGIM team, and of course APUSEN, Asia Pacific Community Engagement Network, to also now, whatever bulletin that we have, can we also publish that in the different languages, so that it can now be distributed to the various more than 90 countries that is involved in APUSEN, can also benefit from the things that is done under community engagement. So in bottom line, we can no longer work in silo. So there is a need, therefore, for integration of knowledge from the various disciplines, and interplay of the sciences and the non-sciences need to be there. This is not the time to separate. I'm fundamental, I'm doing applied, I'm doing applied, I'm not a fundamental. No, the knowledge is in a continuum. And the same thing now, this is not the time to say, this is where science needs to come in, and this is where arts needs to come in, or humanities needs to come in. Now everything has to work together. So research can no longer stop at publication. It needs now to move across the entire value chain, and the research needs to now create impact. And to create impact, this is another problem. You are used to the word ROI, return of investment. What Tan Sri has talked to you about my story is actually return of value. So you don't have to ask all the time, where is the ROI? You can also ask, what is the ROV? So when we are doing things, sometimes we get both ROI and ROV when we are doing, especially community engagement. So the research performed has to move from fundamental to translational, to benefit the community. And I have to say here, we also need to benefit the industry, all right? And in short, what we want to say here is that knowledge creation must also now be for public good, right? And post-COVID, not only do we collaborate, not only do we share information, we also need to work in an integrated and collaborative ecosystem. This is the key buzzword now, collaboration, right? So we need to work in a collaborative ecosystem, and as I said, no longer in silos, and the solutions offered must be whole government approach and whole societal approach. And we have to work together to solve the problem for humanity, and not about how each discipline, whether the science, whether the medicine people can do it, or the allied health can do it, or is it the physics, or is it the chemistry, or is it the engineering. So it's not about how each discipline now can provide the solution. So basically, complex global issues, therefore, require a collaborative ecosystem to actually connect the dots and actually provide the solution that can create a sustainable change. And this is where I say, creating change alone is not enough. I think you need to now ask the question, can you create a sustainable change in society? So solutions, therefore, must be discussed in the quadruple helix. Today, Tan Sri was talking about you having to have the discussion with the community. to have the discussion with the community is okay, but that is a must, but you also need to have a discussion with the quadruple helix, because to make now that innovation, as I'm going to talk about today, translational research, to make that happen, to make that into reality, you need to have the policymakers in there, you need to have the politicians in there, you need to have the NGOs in there, you need to have the other government agencies, so you need to have multidisciplinary from the academia. So you need all these people, quadruple helix and the industry, to be there to now be able to create the kind of innovation that can now help the community. So to create, and once you create that innovation, you need to, of course, to do that innovation, you need to discuss this with the community, because that is the only way that if the solution is accepted, then only you can create a sustainable change. But you must include the community in the implementation, not you say, okay, everything is there, I'm going to bring the solution, I'm the one who's going to implement that solution. So basically, it has to be also involve the community in the implementation. Only then can you get the buy-in. So to create the sustainable change, we need to move research, as I said, across the value chain from fundamental to translational, but this time with impact. And to create impact, this is what I want to say here. The research that is done has got to be people-centric, or you can call it human-centric, you can call it people-led, whatever, but the center of the discussion in the experimental design of the research must be humans in the center, not technology in the center. So I will elaborate further on this. So talking about higher education and the relevancy of community engagement, how would the UNESCO had asked this question, how would you like higher education to be in 2050? And in the study by UNESCO, the key messages of the futures of higher education, as said in the Think Higher and Beyond, of which Tan Sri is involved as a Malaysian representative, the statements speak of university needs to be taking active responsibility for our common humanity, for promoting well-being and sustainability, drawing strength from intercultural and epistemic diversity, and upholding and creating interconnectedness at the multiple levels. So in short, what we are saying is that this is UNESCO saying for the future of higher education in 2050, these are the things that we need. But I also need to emphasize here that the Malaysian Higher Education Blueprint had all the elements as well as outlined by UNESCO today. As Tan Sri said, Falsafah Pendidikan Negara also have all this imbibe, whatever UNESCO has to say is imbibe in the blueprint, which is meant to address higher education to be still valid for up to 2030. So we are saying also, because there is also a need to change in the kind of students that we want to nurture. So the higher education blueprint is also saying all the things that UNESCO is now saying. There's also a need that this is our problem, right? We as Tan Sri said lah, Falsafah Pendidikan Negara we have, but did we do it? This is the next problem. Malaysian Higher Education Blueprint we have. Did we understand it? Did we implement it well? This is another problem. So the problem with Malaysia is that we're very good in creating blueprints and all that, but we are lousy as far as implementation is concerned, because there was no engagement, very good engagement, and then it doesn't cascade down. And then as you change vice chancellors, you change TNCs, right? They also have not been educated into this kind of thinking, and they think that whatever they want to do now has to be something new, but it's not new. It is already there. It's a matter of whether you understand this or not. And in short, tomorrow is about creating university for public good. So it's the creation of university that is actively engaged. This is what UNESCO is saying, with the life and problems of its community, society, environment. So as soon as you see these words, you know already community engagement is definitely going to be relevant. So, but this is another word that you need to now see, that the university must be values-based, and that it will use its knowledge to provide solutions for public good to ensure a sustainable tomorrow. And steps towards creation of such university is there. have been in place in Malaysia, like the Apex University at USM, and of course with Tan Sri Zul there, the IIUM is also another university in its own mold, creating towards this values base. But with the advent of global economic crisis, however, we begin to see income generation or neoliberal entrepreneurial universities now as a dominant move among the public universities. So this is the concern, that the drive to move public university to generate basically income for survival, in essence, will enhance inequalities again and reduce the sense of public purpose. Why? Because the reason why we have public university is to allow for very good students who cannot afford a private education to be here in the university. So this is where we want to be able to do that. If we now are starting to charge students coming into the public university, then it's going to create a very blurred line between public and private university now. So if we are not careful, the students may just see the university as a place to gain career-related skills, or what we call employability and credentials, and therefore no longer a place to seek truth, and also the place that will now hopefully shape the minds of the future. So to basically, what we want to say is that at the end of the day, we need to nurture, we need to have nation builders. That is what university is all about. But we want to nurture a balanced nation builder that is values-based. That means values-based education becomes now a very essential thing to have, to balance between knowledge and character of the individual, or whatever Tan Sri called, to create a complete person. As I quote Tan Sri here, higher education prepares learners not only for livelihood, but also for life. So that is a very deep meaning that needs more understanding. So in short, with the higher education blueprint, the future requires our students to be flexible, to be adaptable to 21st century challenges, right? These the key words: to be flexible, to be adaptable, but also to have a global mindset, because yes, Tan Sri is talking about nurturing the inside, the spiritual being of a human being, but we also want to make sure that whatever we nurture is also having a global mindset, because today is not only about Malaysia, it's about how Malaysia now fits into the whole world ecosystem. So to have a global mindset and be a global citizen, but without losing our national identity, right? As we have seen, sometimes we become more British than the British, you know. So this is where we need to now make sure our national identity is there. So in short, we would require our student to be intercultural competent, because here we are living in Malaysia. Of course, with the multiracial, we need to have intercultural competency. And this is sometimes we lack, because the Malays will stay with the Malays, so polarization is happening. So we need to break that, right? And in the community, you have also, where the multiracial students are going into the community, intercultural competency is now inculcated. And when you now start to have 100 countries coming to the universities, like the foreign students, right, representing 100 countries. I mean, the universities go rah, rah, rah about how many countries of foreign students that they have in the university. But do the Malaysians, the local students, understand the culture of all these foreign students, or they just don't mix? So when we have, what is the use of having 100 countries in your university campus, but you don't even interact with them? So this is where we say now there is a need for intercultural competency to be happening. And of course, the student need to become a problem solver with critical thinking, with great communication skills. This is very important. And they need to learn to respect and understand other races and nationalities. And this is why I say I don't quite advocate the word tolerate. The word tolerate means I tolerate you. Then tomorrow when I don't tolerate you, I get very angry with you. But if you now go into the concept of respect and understanding, then with the other races, then it's not a matter of tolerance. Then when we have that, it is important to have unity in diversity. This is very important for nation building, and very important if we want now to be part of the collaborative economy. So in short, we want to have values in our higher education, and we nurture the future generation. We want to have unity in diversity. We want also to have a global citizen with upward mindset and balance between knowledge and character. So if we want all this, how do we expect the student to learn about all these values that you're talking about? Because most of these things are intangible. So how do you expect them to learn? And this is where we have the Malaysian Higher Education Blueprint 2015 to 2025, because we first ask what kind of future generation do we want? And we say we want learned, values-based talent that is holistic, entrepreneurial, knowledgeable, balanced, yet relevant to meet the 21st century challenges, and balance between knowledge and character. And we have about 10 shifts to support all that, right? With each one. But the most important among all this is shift one, that is the creation of the holistic, entrepreneurial, and balanced graduate, all right? Because that is the essence of the future generation. And we believe in the higher education blueprint that the education is about humanizing the student, and we want our education system to actually move from training of human capital to nurturing of a human being or talent. And this is where sometimes it's very difficult, you know, when you buat modules, you say you want to train people to become familiar with your modules. Actually, human beings are not dogs. So we don't train human beings, we nurture them to make them understand. So these words that academics are now using is also very important in what is your thinking about all this about. And that is why in the blueprint, in the higher education blueprint, which I co-helm when I was a DG, is to remove all words concerning human capital. There is no human capital in the blueprint. We use the word talent, ataupun human being, ataupun bakat. So we don't use human capital. I get very upset when I see policies from Academy of Sciences that still use human capital, and I would change that to now human being. And I hope that the pegawai-pegawai that is listening or academics who are preparing speeches for your leaders, right, to also refrain from using the word human capital and use the word talent ataupun insan. So the Malaysian higher education blueprint imbibes also the spirit of the falsafah pendidikan negara, with the exception of the word sejahtera being stated there, or as a complete person. The concept of a complete person is also there in the higher education blueprint. And in fact, we wanted to go one step forward. How do you measure this? And we say that if we are nurturing a human being, then it's not about CGPA alone. It is about the human being, right? The communication skill, the leadership, the all the other abilities, the intangibles, the values, the attitudes, all these need to be measured as well as a complete human being. So that's why we have integrated CGPA. And this is going to be the first in the world. Actually, it is there already in the blueprint, and it will be the first in the world, except that we have politics that now influence all this kind of thinking. And yet in UNESCO, when I was presenting integrated CGPA in the UNESCO meeting in Paris, everybody was looking forward to have this, because they are saying this is the kind that we want to move forward. Because the student may not be a very good CGPA, but they punya other attributes and attitudes are very important. The question that we want to ask is that, is CGPA of 4.0 guarantee you that the person is a good human being? So if CGPA 4.0 states that, then that's fine, but essentially it's not. You know, you want to be able to say this person has a CGPA of 4.0, but it is a individual that is also hebat, yang fulfill all the requirements of a complete person. So this is what we want, and that's what we want to do from semester 1, the day the student comes in, and how now we turn the student from zero to hero. That's what we wanted to do. But of course, this is leceh because it creates a lot of work to the lecturers in designing, because this will influence your KPI, your inability to publish. It would take away the time for the student to now do for your research and for your promotion. So when that happens now, of course, you put amanah on the sideline, and now to concentrate about publication, and as a result, integrated CGPA when Dr. Mazli came in was shelved. So this when politics with the understanding takes over, this is where I think the future of higher education, when we want to say learning to be the 4 pillars of UNESCO, would easily have been solved by the integrated CGPA. And we even made a rubric on it so that you can, and it's all designed by our Malaysian professors. No interference from the outside. And we also wanted entrepreneurial mindset, not to make everybody to become an entrepreneur, but having an entrepreneurial mindset is training the student to have critical thinking, problem solving with humans in the center. What is wrong with that? That is community engagement. So this is where, again, kalau concepts there are not being understood, and this is where I call upon ACAP to do the job of actually training these potential leaders to understand first about what is happening in the country before they just continue to with their job, right? And dalam that, we already say that the classroom alone is not enough. It has to be experiential learning or service learning to create this shift one human being that we wanted, a complete person. So and with the industry, we have the CO faculty. But when we talk about employability, we always worry about, because we worry our anak have to be a job seeker. That's why you asked the question just now, parent wants to make sure their anak have a job. But tomorrow is about gig economy. Even tomorrow, today is already about gig economy. And this no longer about, turning on the car, going out at 8 and then come back. Those are job seekers. All right, but now we want job creators. When we have people who are job creators, we don't have to worry about employability. So these are the kind of change in paradigm thinking that we need to have, and you need to understand as the academics as well. But we want them to be job creators that is with values. So in short, if you now ask the question, the student, especially those graduates, never mind, mirror on the wall, ask yourself, all right, what do you remember most in your university, doing your PhD and so on? At the end of the day, what you remember most is 20% of what has been that you are now teaching, but the rest, what made you what you are, is the EQ, right? This is the intangibles that you learn from the university. You learn about the learning innovation skill, you learn about the digital, you learn about career and life skills. This is actually the one that actually shape you to what you are today. I mean, my training is in medical biotech. What the hell was I doing as a vice chancellor of University of USM of USIM, and also as a DG of higher education? So this is like a mismatch, right? But the thing is, right, you got to be good first in your domain area of expertise, and then only you can come in as a leader in administration and whatnot. Because if you don't gain RESPCT from the professors, from the academic, you cannot essentially turn around and say, I want to lead you. All right. So this is the kind of things that we now see about higher education. And what at the end of the day, what we want the student to have is to have flexible, adaptable, and agile respond to change, and of course to become lifelong learners, right? So university education alone is not enough. So that's why we need community engagement. And basically one way to restore the universities to fulfill their social obligation, I told you, whether you like it or not, this neoliberal of creating income generation, it is not in the blueprint to create income generation. It is to create surplus. That means even up to 2035, the blueprint have already calculated and said that essentially the universities cannot be generating income, especially for public university. They should only maximum pun 40% saja, and that is in beyond 2035, not today. But sekarang ni kita semua kena generate income overnight, and this is what falters the true spirit of what the university is all about. So basically, one way that we can restore to fulfill the social obligation is and inculcate values among the student, among the staff, among the academics, besides doing volunteerism, basically is to undergo community engagement. That involves experiential learning, service learning by academics as well as by the students. Community engagement program actually bridges the researcher and the local community. They build sustainable partnership to ensure that research initiatives all meet the community's needs. And we know, I mean, the African proverb is there, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Basically, classroom learning is not enough. They need to learn now from a living lab, and that living lab is the community. So the researchers benefit essentially from community engagement by focusing on timely, responsive, culturally relevant research questions. This is where you get better research design when you start to now mix with the community rather than becoming desk-based researchers that baca literature review and then come out with the hypothesis that you or problem statement. Go down there to the ground and find out exactly what exactly does society really want. And while community members can directly influence this, right? Because it will now turn around how you're thinking, everything else, right? So community engagement actually provides support that ensure researchers to understand what are the health needs and some of the barriers of special population like kumpulan kelainan upaya, and actually work to facilitate new academic community partnership. And as such, the community engagement has developed a range of new strategies and approaches to engage diverse communities and actually facilitate meaningful academic community relationship. Because whether you like it or not, right, you cannot inculcate unity by theory, right? It has to be by experiential learning. And even though it should have started from the schools, but it's never too late because the university students are adults. They can now learn faster and better with community. So intercultural competency, intercultural communication skill are all very important. And here we are, we want to do Bahasa, we don't want to do English, we have problem with English, let alone having problem with French or Spanish or Japanese or Mandarin or Korea with all these 100 countries, or African language with all these 100. We don't even bother, we don't even ask the student to actually bother to learn about their culture or even their language or a little bit of something of me. This is the concept. We already have internationalization at home. Why are we not using it to the best that we can? All right, and to ensure intercultural competency. So university is also a global village, whether we like it or not, with all these multinationals coming into the university. These are where we have now, the university itself is a global village. And this is where we need to now make sure they have intercultural competency, not just in the lecture hall, but from the dorms all the way to the lecture hall, all the way to the projects that we do. So once the student, our Malaysian student, get to have intercultural competency, that will build them confidence at internationalization at home, and confidence to be now a global player when Malaysia also can become a global talent hub. So these are the kind of things that we need to have confidence, or what we call jati diri kebangsaan. So community engagement essentially is a big plus because it will offer the university the opportunity to inculcate the values and good citizenry in our future generation via volunteerism, or experiential learning, or even service learning. And essentially, it will also restore social relevance and obligation to the society. And that means educating not just the student, also the staff. Academic staff, as Tan Sri was saying, how do you go into the kampung? How do you behave? How do you dress? All this is very important to be received well by the kampung folks. So it reduces, and when we start to go in and we understand what is their needs, this is where now we provide solutions that is more meaningful, that is more purposeful, that will now create that sustainable change. And this is where we now say, okay, let's try to reduce the inequity divide by providing a meaningful solution to serve the marginalized or the bottom billion, who makes up more than 2/3 essentially of the world's population. So community engagement basically embraces partnership guided by mutual respect among the partners concerned, actually to work in a collaborative manner. So this is where we want to stop using the word knowledge transfer. Knowledge transfer is about having that knowledge, I'm cleverer than you, and I now say this is the best thing since sliced bread for you. So because I have done the research and I now say this is good for you. So basically, this is no longer applicable. We want knowledge assimilation, so that if you want to create sustainable change, the community must use that idea, so that when the community use that idea, you come back to the community 2-3 years later, you will find that the community is still using that idea. So that means it's creating a sustainable change. And so what we want eventually is community transformation, or what we call knowledge for change. So I think USM is now under Apusen, the hub for knowledge for change recognition given by UNESCO to us. I'm now IIUM. Okay, students from the various disciplines, basically science, technology, arts, humanities, all essentially will work together to now provide solution to the community. And that in essence is the community engagement. And therefore community engagement cannot be an elective, cannot be PM tepi. At the moment now, it depends on the university. Even I'm sure, even at USM, I'm not sure whether it is central part of the academic curriculum when it should be. When you do it as an elective or you do it as a PM tepi, then that means not every student will get the benefit of community engagement. So this is where you need to turn around, and because in the education blueprint dah lama diminta sejak 2015 that the universities put this as part and parcel of their academic curriculum, not as PM tepi and not as an elective. But the universities have not decided to do that as well. And that is, well, that is autonomy, right? But at the end of the day, if it is of benefit to the students, and this is the amanah that you need to do to nurture the future generation, I think that they need to be taken seriously. And when you do that, your research that you're doing will also now be creating an impact. So this is where we need to stop doing just community service. We need to be doing community engagement. This is a concept like was explained by Bakti Siswa in USM, that where, you know, you pergi cat masjid lah, potong rumput and all that, and hello, that is where the welfare people are supposed to do. We are training the future generation of Malaysia to become a nation builder. To do that, they got to understand the rakyat. And that means to say they got to go down to the ground and learn from the community, because the community have got much to offer. And basically you get the words of Lao Tse, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, but teach him how to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So community engagement is about the universities. When we put it in the blueprint, it's about the universities going out there to now train the people how to use the fishing rod and not give the fish. You know, in Bakti Siswa, okay lah, you bawa beras, you bawa gula, you bawa all these things. But tomorrow you don't bring any of these things, the orang kampung will now what? They will be in hunger. But if you now train them to use the fishing rod, this is what this is all about. A change in the mindset of how we do community engagement. That's why we say engaging the community. Yeah? So therefore, as we perform community engagement also needs training. You know, as we concentrate on impact to the community, we need to also discuss about the concept itself. As I said before, we use knowledge transfer. And, you know, learning from the African, as what Tan Sri has showing, there's a lot that things that we can learn from the community. The community is very rich in their own knowledge. And this is what, ladies and gentlemen, I call upon you to have intellectual humility. This is very important to now say to yourself, hello, I'm not, you know, I can be a domain expert in my area, but I don't, you know, I don't have enough. I need to learn more. And this is intellectual humility. You need to undergo knowledge exchange. You need to co-learn and you need to co-create with the community. And when you co-create, when you first you co-learn, right? And when you co-learn with all the quadruple helix, then the quadruple helix come back to co-create, and then you put it and implement it together to create a sustainable change. So only then can we talk about providing solutions of impact or outcome, known now as knowledge for change, or what we call KRI, key result indicator, or key rakyat indicator, whatever, instead of just simply KPI. And that's why I think when I was at USM, as the VC, I mainstream both KPI and KIP. So when we do that, we are going to create essentially, we also as an RU cannot be left far behind, but because again, nobody will talk to you about your ideas if you are not there as a university of good standing. So, but it is also important that we mainstream KIP, because it is the intangibles that's going to make a difference. And that's why at USM, I advocated for a preferred university rather than to be the #1 university. So when you are preferred university, you can have many restaurants in the mall, but you always go to that particular restaurant because that's your preferred restaurant. So this is what we mean to say, what is the uniqueness that is there for each university that is going to make people continue to want to come to that university, continue to want to hire the graduates from the university, and continue, and the alumni continue to be proud of the university. So this is the concept. So basically, with community engagement, we will want to bring back trust of the people to the university. We've been now asked to generate income. So the people are beginning to lack of trust with what a public university is all about. So universities therefore have a very important role to play in winning back the trust that has been lost. Yeah. So we need to collaborate and engage with the community by creating opportunities to work personally and to work directly with the community, to share the knowledge, to listen to their creative ideas, and to work together on projects that have practical application within the community. I think Dr. Zul, I'm glad that after my talk, Dr. Zulkifli will be explaining, and I think he does a lot of community engagement in order to bring the Kelulut, and as a result, created also a Sejahtera concept for the environment as well. And that, I think, is a very fantastic thing that Dr. Zulkifli is doing, and I think you need to learn from him as well. So I brought him also to UIA, or IIUM, to also bring the Kelulut over to IIUM. But what I'm trying to say here, even in my work on Typhidot, when I developed the diagnostic kit, it was meant for people of Malaysia, by Malaysians for Malaysia. And I realized that when I started to go to Indonesia, Philippines, all these other countries, the way people are doing things, the way people get typhoid is totally different. So, you know, I didn't know about the fact that in Indonesia, babies are getting typhoid, whereas in Malaysia, only school-going age is getting typhoid. Then when I went in and I found out why, I went to the community and I found out why, because the people in some of the communities are so poor that the mother doesn't have breast milk to feed the child, and therefore they will take contaminated water, mix it with banana, you know, and then that is the food that they feed to the child, to the baby, and basically the baby gets typhoid because of the contaminated water. So when I learned about that, I came back to the lab, and that's how I created Typhi.M Mark II of the test, and that created another patent to now happen. And then I went to Brak village in Bangladesh, and I said, okay, I wanted to learn about the community, and I said, where's your clinic where they're doing the diagnostics? So she brought me to this hut, and then I realized it's a chicken rumah reban ayam, chicken rooster. So basically, because there's the patient with the hospital, and then I turn around this end, all the chickens are roosting on this end. And I said, where's the plug? There is no plug, there is no electricity. So this is where I say, OMG, you know, all my tests, my PCR, everything requires electricity. I said, this is no go. So that I come back to the lab again, and I created Mark III, Mark IV together with the typhoid team. And that's how we get the lateral dipstick test, and that's how we also develop PCR that no longer needs to use the PCR machine. So you see, there's a lot of things that you learn from when you start to go into the ground, and then you see the practicality of it, and then you say, okay, whatever you're doing now, you need to change. And this created a much better solution to the community. So, and you know, universities, we are so good at signing of MOUs and MOA as our symbol of collaboration. But at the end of the day, what is the outcome of that? So, so basically, again, when we start to do this, we need to also collaborate with the community to now have this engagement. And when we gain their trust, only then can we help them regain and strengthen their self-confidence, their dignity, and hope along with the way, along the way, we also learn from them. So basically, in short, when you're performing community engagement, it's important that you listen, you look, you learn, right? So, in order for the knowledge created to be relevant, it must involve a lot of listening. A lot of the times, pensyarah, you know, dia suka elok, dia suka bercakap. So they're going to shut up once a while and actually listen and observe to what the community is actually telling you. And then tap into also, as you are doing this observation, I mean, we are all having PhDs, we should be smart, right? Our EQ should be as good as our IQ, right? So we should be able to see what is the talent that they have, and probably now move that talent to cater for how now they can now be involved in the implementation of the projects as well. So then you seek evidence to support the observation, and it's of course followed by analysis of this evidence, and open our doors and basically discuss. And this is where I say engaging the community, engaging the industry, engaging quadruple helix, all this will now forge a genuine partnership, because government agencies who's going to help the community also need to understand what is the problem on the ground. So this is where you now act as a catalyst to bring everybody together and implement the activities via experiential learning or service learning, including the postgraduate, including the undergraduate, whatever in the implementation, and undergo reflections. This is the other thing. You know, you don't have to do exam all the while. Self-reflection, as what we do in YSS, the YSS program. Self-reflection, every day the student will write, what did I learn from doing something like this? Now they are advocating self-reflection as also an assessment method that can be used rather than just exams. So these are some of the things that you need to now think about. Now, when we start to move to translational research, all right, translational research actually can help prevent the communities from sliding back into poverty, help countries meet current and anticipated workforce needs, and then find innovative solutions to pressing development problems, and can pave the way for more equitable development paradigm. So this is what the concept of what translational research can do. But the translational research that we do actually need to be performed with values, all right? Because if the right value is there to the research that we do, it will give us a sense of purpose and provide meaning to the research performed. I think the concept that Dr. Zulkifli will bring about today has the hybrid. I prefer the word hybrid here because, you know, we also need to bring technology, but as long as the technology is centered to now helping and enhancing the human being, which is in the center or human-centric, then the solution becomes a better solution. So it will also guide us to ask the question, how can we make a difference today? All right, so when we design people-led or human-centric solution, basically you are focused on the people. The people is your target client, yeah? Therefore, you need to work from Z to A. That means work from your target client, what is it that they want, and then come back to the lab to redesign what exactly is the experimental and what is the problem statement. So all they need to come to be there, but you must work from Z to A. But unfortunately, most of our researchers and academics are working from A to Z. They get a problem statement, they do what is their solution, and etc., and how is the solution better than all that you are doing, but essentially you are doing it from A to Z. And that's why sometimes you commercialize, sometimes you don't, because whatever you're doing is not something what the society really wants. So this is very important, because you got to ask, what will this solution mean to someone tomorrow? All right, so it will guide us to be future oriented and essentially have tomorrow's mind today. So we need to actually move from output to outcome or impact, and this is where I have advocated in IIUM, and also IIUM is also now doing this, the concept of responsible research and innovation, and the same concept now is also in the policy of academic science to now have the future landscape of RDCIE as we move research together with creating economic impact to the society and to the country. You need to do the research in a responsible manner, and a responsible research and innovation is always discussion and engagement of in a collaborative manner, in an integrated with a multidiscipline, and always it is people-led or human, people-centric or human-centric. And to make the difference to humanity, essentially, we need to go back to basics, right? How now do we make a difference and generate knowledge that is beneficial? Of course, we say one way is to perform impactful research. But if we're doing that, you may ask now, are we not getting impact now? I mean, here we are as an RU, you're moving top 200, all the 5 RUs are top 200 universities of the world. Of course, you're going to ask the question, are we not creating impact now? But ladies and gentlemen, the impact that you are creating is called academic impact, because that is only about books and about journals, right? Q1, Q2, right? So as Tan Sri had said, we need to balance between impact and impact factor. So if you now want to create knowledge for a sustainable change in society, and you want to make a difference, you need to go beyond academia, all right? So you need to show, not only do you need to go beyond academia, you need to say and show that it is with evidence. You have to demonstrate that it is actually working. That's what we mean by key result or outcome, rather than the process of doing it. So, and therefore you need to be action oriented. And one way that you can create an impact is to look at the SDGs. And that's why I think USM is also moving on the SDG. And this is how we show the mercy for all humankind. So of course, if you ask about impact in terms of research, there are three kinds of research impact that you always go through. One is called the academic impact, and that is the one that you've been doing all this while. The other one is called the socio-economic or practical impact, and this is the kind that I'm talking today about translational, about going there to the community and demonstrate contribution outside the area of academia. So the outcome can now be adopted, can be adapted, can be implemented, can be used, can be commercialized. So there are many things you can do with this innovation that you have now created, as long as it is human-centric. So like we have, what is it? It can be new teaching and learning method. It can be the usage of drones to help people in agriculture, all right, and or the usage of AI to actually turn around the halal supply chain. So there's many things that you can use in terms of making things to be human-centric, but using technology to enhance it. The third one is, of course, policy impact, and this impact on policy and decision-making for both the public and private sector. You can have but it requires a long-term study, require collaborative effort, and require that you are in the position to be able to create the impact, to turn around. This has to be done at cabinet level to create now the impact on policy. So these are many things that you can do. But let me concentrate on socio-economic impact, which is the current one on community engagement. So to build the nation and a fast economic recovery post-COVID-19, it is imperative that we perform impactful research in the real world rather than simply within the academic community. As Mark Twain says, knowledge becomes wisdom only after it has been put to good use, right? So essentially, okay, that is Mark Twain. But if you look at what Prophet Muhammad is all saying, you know, being IIUM kena jadi ustazah sekarang. So when if you look at what Prophet Muhammad is now saying, that when a man dies, his acts come to an end except for three: his sedekah, the production of beneficial knowledge, and a pious child who prays for him or for her. Basically, you know, as a lecturer, you have the benefit of all three. Not everyone can turn knowledge into beneficial knowledge, but as an academic staff, you can. So therefore, use this opportunity to gain yourself a ticket to syurga in the sense that you see that word, it says knowledge yang boleh dimanfaatkan oleh manusia. Bukan knowledge creation for the journals. This has already been emphasized by even in our religion, and I'm sure in all other societies as well, all this is there. So that is why it's very important for us to get our head out of the sand and actually say, okay, where exactly is the amanah that needs to be done by the academic staff. So performance of impactful research is nothing new. You should have been doing this a long time ago. All right, but essentially you are tired, you are stuck with KPI, you're producing all these papers that you can't pass the KPI to go to what is your real amanah, which is the knowledge that you have generated needs now to be benefiting the society. So the performance of impactful research is usually very complex and interaction. Like I said, you got to connect the dots, right? So it does a lot of, it has to have a lot of patience on your side and respect and understanding to now bring all this community together, especially with the quadruple helix and to discuss what exactly is the problem. So the impact-driven research is best approached by a research cluster, not by individuals, but by working in a cluster comprising in that cluster of a junior, senior academic, and preferably of multidisciplinary and preferably multi-universities. basically working with the quadruple helix approach and also with the international collaborators if they need to come in to provide some of the solution that is needed by that particular community. So basically, in short, it calls for an integrated and collaborative research approach. And when that happens, the grants that is now financing this kind of research tomorrow has also got to be a long-term grants between 3 to 5 years and not just a 2-year or 3-year grants. So this is where the university can also make its own policy to perform research with impact, and because only then can the university be the pulse of the nation. This is autonomy. This is where the university can decide. This is where the university can also decide that the promotion of its lecturers must now inculcate the ability to create impact to the community or creation of impactful research rather than just looking at the number of papers Q1, Q2 and all that, you know, other than academic impact to be balanced also with societal impact. After all, at the end of the day, it is the societal impact that is now expected of us, of the university, by the community, by the industry, and also by the government. So how do we do all that? And that is now to go beyond academia. And this is where community engagement becomes very important as part of this journey to create this impact. And therefore, that's why I say it has to be part of the academic curriculum, because that's what we involve the undergraduate. But if it is part and parcel of your research and innovation, this also will involve now the postgraduate, which is tomorrow's future CEOs. And future job creators, and you know, you cannot say innovation and entrepreneurial stop at the undergraduate, but the one who's going to be the future CEOs have no concept of entrepreneurial or even being sensitive to the community needs. So this is where I guess community engagement is a continuum. It shouldn't stop only at the undergraduate, but also the postgraduate need to learn about this. But when you perform the community engagement, we want the different ages within the community to also gain confidence in themselves. And this is why I say when you implement, you have to involve them, involve the community, because we want the community to have the vision that their future and their new outlook about what they can do to now make that difference. And because these ideas came from them and rooted in their lives, so they gain this sense that they have something to contribute back to their community and also to others. And this makes the buy-in that you need in order to now be able to get sustainable change in the society. So the society, the community will now learn that they can be part of the technological revolutions and then not left behind. So even if you're doing kelulut, if you're doing about something that can now turn around the way they do business, they will, however, feel that by the interaction they have with the academic, they will feel that they have been educated, they have, when you involve them in the project, they will feel that they have also been enabled and they have been empowered to now make a difference and control the destiny of their own community or village. So of course, you're going to ask the questions like, okay, how do I measure this, right? This is so leceh, you know, because they're so full of intangibles. How do I measure this? Because we have always been trained for ROI. We are looking for economic impact. How much money? Okay, before intervention, how much money per month they make. After intervention, how much money per month they make. So you start showing that off as the ROI. But essentially, look at the ROV. The ROV is about, do you see an understanding? Do you see enhanced understanding coming out from the community? Do you see an attitudinal change from the community? Do you see a cultural change or the way they make decisions, or the environmental change that has been created? So all these other indicators that is intangibles can also be looked into as saying that this is the ROV, return of value, that you get out of the innovations that have been done. Because I like to remind everyone that, as Einstein says, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. So this is where I think you need to have this balance when you want to go about with community engagement, because at the end of the day, the impact that we get from community engagement, as long as it is human-centric in the center, the impact is like you can get economic transformation. I mean, that's very easy to measure, and this is something that you will lot of and be able to tell everybody about this. But it also has the other benefit that it provides the experiential learning on values and character building, not only of the student, but also of the staff and also of academic staff. This is now more important, and this is the ROV that you need to see happening with community engagement, and the fact that your R&D will now be a much more impactful one because you're producing something that the community really needs. So all that is not just a rosy, it is still community engagement, making a sustainable change is still a bumpy ride. Do not expect that when you go in, things will be so hunky-dory, all right? Because sustainable solution, other issues and challenges in creating that. The must be, first of all, you have to make sure that your solution must be available, accessible, affordable, and appropriate to the culture. Appropriate to the culture, macam Tan Sri Zul kata lah, dia buat sitting toilets, right? At the end of the day, people do their business around the toilet because you never talk to them to find out that they like squatting. And that's why now, even when you do an innovation that makes sense everywhere else around the world, it may not make sense to that community. So you have to now discuss. And success to create sustainable change is usually hampered by issues that go beyond financial constraints. It's not about, do we have enough money to create the town hall for the community or something like that, but sometimes about politics, sometimes about a lot of other issues that come in as well. So you need to understand, you need the political will, and you need to experience and understanding the culture of the people, as has been said, to in order to create this sustainable change. And of course, to create that sustainable change, you also need to talk to the politicians. That's why in an engagement like this, you see everyone. So like if Dr. Zul wants to do this in Sabah, you still have to work with the people in Sabah, the ministers, the whatever, to now make sure the agencies involved to make sure that this can now happen in a much more sustainable way, right? So you also need to work with the locals to enable, educate, empower them so that the solutions implemented will be realized in its true potential. And the reality on the ground is that you also need to know some of the change, right? The responsiveness of the local needs, right? So make sure that the solution can be implemented without requiring extensive structural operational changes, because if you do that, that's usually will be close to being impractical and then become unrealistic, the solution that you are now offering. And of course, when you're doing all this, even though they don't have the background, you need to train the collaborators, you need to train the local folks to become your technicians, especially when you are working in a research limited setting. I'm showing to you here, this is the picture of the diagnostic being done for women in third trimester in the chicken coop that I was there in Brak in Bangladesh. So you can see there's the nurse, and you can see the diagnostic is just very rudimentary, and of course nowhere on that wall can you see a plug. So there is no electricity, nothing. So this is where, when you start to go down to the ground, you start to see what it's all about. Do not downgrade. See what they have, see what is within their capacity, then go back to the lab. And when we turn this around to the lateral dipstick, I do not downgrade them, because all they have to do is add water, and that things can now be shown positive or negative for typhoid within 15 minutes. So this is the kind of change that you need. You see their problems, you see how now best to provide the solution for them. And that solution is not only for Bright Village, that solution is for around the world. That's how the test gets to be sold to 18 countries around the world. So you collaborate with workers and community leaders from the area as well to come up with strategies and to learn about the possible barriers. So basically what, in short, I want to say, sustainable development and human capacity development actually need to go hand in hand. And before my last slide is to say that perhaps there is a need for us to re-engineer the way we approach research as well. So because if we start off by saying, okay, how do we do now R&I for SDG to turn around the 17 SDG? So we need to work in a collaborative manner from T0, all right? Not the way we've been doing, we develop everything, and then when we go to the community, we talk to the community. When we want to go to the industry, we talk to industry. Basically, no, everything that we need to do before we do the experimental design itself has to be quadruple helix engagement. This is the change that we need to see, and you can decide whether you want to do a knowledge-driven one or demand-driven one for the industry or for the community. Is all there, but you need to work with the quadruple helix from day one. And basically, this is where, when you start doing that, you will be mainstreaming both KPI and KIP to move things around, and of course collaborating with respected mutual respect among the partners, especially when we are collaborating with the international partners. So these are some of the things that I can share in terms of moving translational research, because at the end of the day, I use the word enable, educate, empower the community basically to help themselves, because only then can the solutions to the needs of the people be realized in its true potential. So I must leave you by saying that, you know, change is inevitable, but that change must be with you, right? Because you yourself must be the change that you wish to see. So with that, I thank you very much for your time. Assalamualaikum. Right, back to you, Fazila.
Majlis merakamkan setinggi-tinggi penghargaan kepada yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asmah Ismail di atas perkongsian sebentar tadi. Baiklah tuan-tuan dan puan-puan, mungkin ada satu atau dua soalan yang boleh diberikan kepada Datuk. Saya persilakan. Baik Datuk, di ruang perbualan ini ada dua soalan yang telah diutarakan. Yang pertama, dear Datuk Asmah, thank you very much for a very practical and significant sharing. May I ask, how do we reconcile this value-based education when the stakeholders, example KPT, require universities to ensure graduate employability as the main and key achievement? Silakan Datuk.
Yeah, basically, this is where I say what is the left hand doing and what is the right hand doing. Here is ACAP asking for values-based education, and at the same time, that is also the policy of the higher education blueprint to have values-based. But the KPI that came down to the chancellors also need to be relooked and reviewed. And this is where we say when we wanted job creators, then we were no longer talking about job employability. You know, so this is some of the things I think need to be squared and rationalized currently. But nothing is wrong in also making sure that we nurture the students with values, because that will be the competitive edge that the student has. Not only is the student, even now the industry is asking for students with values, because it's not just about the technical skill. Hello, everybody's got technical skills, right? So if you have a CGPA of 4.0 all coming in for the interview, all of them are very good in their academic, but what's going to be the one that you want to hire will be the one that will be a very good nation builder and a potentially very good employee to the industry or to the employer. So that will be a student with that competitive edge of values. So this is where I'd say, rather than creating another Emron, we also want a much better companies of the future. And don't get me wrong, the survey done by Talent Corp has also shown that industries also now want graduates that are values-based. So having values will create that competitive edge, and that will also be the kind of competitive edge, because Malaysia is also exporting our talent. You know, our graduates are not just meant for us. Our graduates are going to Vietnam, going to Southeast Asia, going to Singapore. So the Malaysian graduates seem to be the ones that the people want to hire because of this plus that the graduates have. So I think, you know, don't see things as black and white. See also the mainstreaming of KPI and KIP in satu, we talk about employability, but how do you enhance that? By ensuring values is there with our students, and that make the student get a better chance of being employed. Let's say, put that way.
Okey Datuk, soalan terakhir daripada Dr. Wendy daripada Universiti Melaya. Beliau juga bertanya, Datuk, can you share your insights on the difference between community engagement and SULAM, service learning, which universities are now asked to do? Silakan Datuk.
Basically, you can, under the concept of community engagement, stroke service learning. So essentially, we give the, in the blueprint, we give the student the choice to actually do service learning which is actually maybe join the military, not military, pelapis and all that. So they can do that aspect in terms of service learning, where they also inculcate the values and attitudes and attributes, or they can do community engagement. So we give the stroke, that's why it's service learning or community experiential learning stroke service learning. Experiential learning can be by volunteerism, YSS, can be by community engagement, can be by service learning. So there are these leeways. It's not like a hard and fast rule. So I don't know, maybe it is unique only to UM or to others, but in the blueprint itself, we allow the flexibility for the student to make the choice. So, you have a buffet menu, so that, as we say, it cannot be all size fits all, right? So we give that flexibility, but it should be part and parcel of the curriculum. When that happens, then the student will now be involved in either service or community engagement. But if you ask it to be an elective, then the student may never choose community engagement to be an elective at all. And that will be a sad day. That's what I'm trying to say, that this is very much relevant for 21st century challenge, because at the end of the day, when we face with VUCA, when we face with the crisis that we are now facing with COVID, it's not just the science, it is actually the intangibles, the shared values, the collaborative effort. All these are now what bring us together as part and parcel of societal approach that actually now is providing the solution to COVID. So it is the intangibles that is actually providing flexible, adaptable, agile response, so that because COVID is something that you have never had before. So whatever you want to do is going to be on trial and error. And that's where collaborative information is very important to make this MKN, to make that decision whether to open or to close, because we are all riding on a thin ice for economic benefit or health benefit. So all this, you have to see what COVID is teaching. It's teaching us many lessons that make us now need to learn, unlearn, relearn about the things that we are doing. So that would be the answer that I want to give. It has the university has the flexibility to provide that kind of experience to the students.
Okey, baik. Terima kasih banyak, Datuk. Tuan Syed masih ada di sini ke? Saya persilakan Tuan Syed, mungkin ada sepatah dua kata yang boleh diberikan kepada Datuk Asma.
Well, what can I say? Okay. So I think everyone wants me to express appreciation for your inspiring presentation, Datuk. All right. And I must say, you have never failed to impress. And impressive and Datuk Asma go or jive well together. Right? Okay. I think your years of research, your depth of understanding of CE, and your ability to present CE in a very interesting way is very invaluable, Dato'. All right. I think we should sign an MOU or MOA between you and BGIM to be our permanent guest speaker, keynote speaker, every time we have a session, Dato'. All right. So once again, thank you for promoting CE. And I think it is an honor and privilege to have you with us all the while. Thank you very much, Dato'. All right.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, you look good in that.
Thank you. Thank you for getting me to get up very early in the morning to be ready at 8:30. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
And all the best to all of you. Right.
Okay, baik. Terima kasih banyak Tuan Syed. Majlis sekali lagi merakamkan setinggi-tinggi perhargaan kepada yang berbahagia Profesor Datuk Dr. Asma Ismail di atas perkongsian sebentar tadi. Satu perkongsian saya anggap sangat luar biasa. Terima kasih banyak Bonda yang sangat saya kasihi dulu, kini dan selamanya. Baiklah, sebagai tanda penghargaan dan terima kasih daripada pihak penyedia program, sedikit cenderamata akan dikirikan terus kepada Datuk. Untuk itu, terima kasih banyak Datuk. Semoga jalinan kerjasama ini dapat kita teruskan lagi di masa akan datang. Terima kasih banyak Datuk.
Thank you, Fazila. Thank you. Thank you, Tuan Syed. See you again sometime.